In the midst of the AIDS crisis, one young man stands against the tide of ignorance and fear, becoming a beacon of hope, courage, and resilience. On April 8, 1990, Ryan White dies after a battle with AIDS. In the 1980s, the world is gripped by fear and misinformation about HIV and the disease it causes, AIDS. Ryan White is an Indiana teenager with hemophilia who requires weekly blood transfusions and is diagnosed with AIDS contracted from a transfusion. At just 13 years old, White faces discrimination and ignorance from his community. He is banned from school, ostracized by neighbors, and even has a brick thrown through his window. Despite the prejudice, White becomes a powerful advocate for HIV/AIDS awareness. He bravely speaks out about his experiences, educating others and fighting stigma. Tragically, White passes away in 1990 at age 18. His courage and determination continue to inspire. His story reminds us of the importance of compassion, understanding, and standing up for what is right. Coming up, we'll learn more about the risks to Ryan White and other hemophiliacs in the 1980s. And we'll also learn a lot more about Ryan White's story. Don't forget to check out Today in History in my Teachers Pay Teachers store. There's a link in the description. White's severe hemophilia, a hereditary blood coagulation disorder, caused even minor injuries to potentially result in severe bleeding. For treatment, he received weekly infusions of a blood product made from the plasma of non-hemophiliacs. Because HIV was so new, there was no process in place at the time to screen donated blood for the virus. Tragically, White was not the only person to contract HIV through a transfusion. Of the 16,000 hemophiliacs in the U.S. in the early 1980s, a staggering half were infected with HIV in this same way. White was barred from school due to misunderstandings about how the disease was contracted, with people ignorantly believing that other children could become infected from sitting in the same classroom or using the same drinking fountain. After a court battle, White was able to return to school and to try to live as normal a life as possible. Ryan White was one of a handful of highly visible individuals in the 1980s and early 90s who helped change public perception of HIV and AIDS. ABC aired a TV movie called The Ryan White Story in 1989. It starred Lucas Hawes as Ryan, Judith Light as his mother, and George C. Scott as his attorney. I remember watching this in school, and it definitely had an impact on me. White's story helped me and so many others to understand how the virus was transmitted and to have compassion for those afflicted. White helped to dispel many of the misconceptions associated with AIDS at that time. His legacy lives on through the Ryan White Care Act. It is the largest federally funded program for people living with HIV/AIDS, and it helps provide care and support for those people. A few days after White's death, former U.S. President Ronald Reagan penned an opinion piece in the Washington Post. Reagan wrote, "We owe it to Ryan to make sure that the fear and ignorance that chased him from his home and his school will be eliminated. We owe it to Ryan to open our hearts and our minds to those with AIDS. We owe it to Ryan to be compassionate, caring, and tolerant toward those with AIDS, their families, and friends. It's the disease that's frightening, not the people who have it." Sorry, a little red-eyed here. It's been an emotional thing to try to film this particular video. It brought up a lot of memories of being a kid. Anyway, if you like what you've seen here, please be sure to like and subscribe, and know that you can see another great Mr. Lewis video right here and another one right here. Thanks for watching.